decision. And this is what Sequoia funded. The first great decision was the first killer app was going to be 3D graphics. And the technology was going to be 3D graphics. And the application was going to be video games. At the time, 3D graphics was impossible to make cheap. It was $1 million image generators from Silicon Graphics. And so it was $1 million, and it's hard to make cheap. And the video game market was $0 billion. So you have this incredible technology that's hard to commoditize and commercialize. And then you have this market that doesn't exist. That intersection was the founding of our company.
Thanks for joining us once again. Your time's valuable, and we appreciate your sharing some with us. Today we have an unusual topic. One of the companies we've added to our portfolio that we're covering is Nvidia. I've referred it to a number of friends who've made a bunch of money. Last year, in the November time frame, we recommended it. Stock has tripled since then, and I'm glad you've made some cash. Today we want to introduce a new concept on Nvidia, which I call the drug dealer sales process. And I think you'll see what I mean as I go through it, even if this is a more brief show than we usually do. Just a reminder, please take time to like and subscribe and join us on Patreon. And we also would appreciate your taking time to comment or like. Definitely influences the number of other viewers that we get. So one of the things that happen is, in general, over the last 20 years, I've lived in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as the Bay Area of San Francisco, primarily. As I've had a chance to live in Washington, D.C., if you live in the areas that are more in the predominantly black neighborhoods that are tougher, you do have some run-ins with people that may or may not be involved in a drug trade. So a few years ago, I learned a concept that's called how serious drug dealers handle customers. And obviously there's a lot of ways they handle them. The unusual one that I thought would be appropriate today to discuss relative to Nvidia is what I call the drug dealer sales process, which included, if you have a drug dealer and there's a regular customer that decides to buy from someone else, the drug dealer will actually take the time to beat his customer. So when I heard this, I was like, wait a second, why would, when you want to treat your customer really well, and then those customers will come back based on how good their treatment was, the good of the price, all the other elements. Well, there's some folks who've decided that, why don't I beat up my customer, and that will definitely force them to come back and be my customer in the future. Which brings us to where we are with Nvidia this week, given that the stock price is down. As you know, we anticipated that there'd be a pullback on the stock driven by what's going on with the fact that the stock price has done extremely well, and they didn't meet the Wisdom number, but they still had 100% growth in revenue for the quarter. All good info. But the stock was down. My anticipation was that we would have an elevating stock price driven by the longs, or serious long-term investors, still buying Nvidia. So there's a new data point that has come up, and that's related to the fact that this week Nvidia actually got in trouble with the Justice Department. And the trouble that they're in is that there have been subpoenas issued relative to the sales process that Nvidia has been engaged in. I wanted to review a few elements of this because I think it'll bake into your general understanding of the company and why it's been this successful and what the future looks like. So I called a good friend of mine who spent 20 years in Silicon Valley and still has a lot of friends spread throughout the valley and other elements. He actually went to MIT. And I asked him, well, what's going on here? And he said to me, well, there's a few things you should understand about Nvidia. The first item is that 10 years ago, there was an incident with Apple where Nvidia sold Apple some chips, and the chips turned out to be defective. Apple ended up having to reimburse customers for those chips, and went back to Nvidia and asked them, well, are you guys going to cover us in any portion of this? And they were like, nope. So that was the end of Apple doing business with Nvidia, even now that they've blown up in terms of the AI stuff that they're doing. So another element of the story he explained is that there are certain rules that Nvidia has relative to its customers. The first rule is bundling. Just like with your homeowners insurance and cars, etc., Nvidia has a process where you want to bundle chips along with a large number of other purchases, because single chip purchases aren't as appealing to them sales-wise, but large numbers of purchases are. So it's in your best interest then to buy full machines or large numbers of machines or large numbers of chips. And the reason is that in a shortage situation, you get moved in priority up the line in terms of when you might get your chips. Another sales element that starts to enter the drug dealer zone is that if in fact you decide to purchase chips from a competitor and not Nvidia's chips, you've now entered the drug dealer zone, which is you made an effort to purchase chips from somebody else. So that means that your priority on the list goes from it might have been kind of high, given that you've met other parameters, to starting to move down kind of low. And then another element of this that goes on, evidently, I'd have to say allegedly for all of these, is that Nvidia has a thing where you don't have to buy from the companies. Many of the chip companies are actually very close to each other within Silicon Valley. So if you made the mistake of going to visit and potentially buying from a competitor, then that's a problem too, because now you potentially are going to buy from another customer or competitor of theirs. And the fact that you did that means that you get deprioritized by the company. So you got to make sure that there's no license plate readers available on your salespeople or senior executives going to visit competitors. So is this legal? Borderline. But the point is that in general, if you're a customer, you better keep buying in large quantities. Otherwise, your prioritization will drop off, and it could drop off rather quickly and dramatically. So this is why I call it a drug dealer situation. Yes, you have buyers. We can't document cases where you're being forced to buy more, but Nvidia can keep raising prices and customers are still buying even if they're sitting on priority lists and don't get any inventory yet. So where we are now, I believe, in the process of Nvidia is large institutions, as they're buying, now have to figure out, now wait a second, are sort of the suits filed on behalf of the Department of Justice consistent with stuff that's going to affect the success of the company, A, and then B, how do we deal with that? And the answer is you have to go back and do a lot of research to make sure there isn't a problem here that's going to zap the company because you're so heavily invested while you're in a stock that may be at its apex. So the intrigue I had here is some of these tactics look a little bit like a drug dealer because you're kind of strong-arming people, hence monopolistic practices that the DOJ will come down on you hard with and can result in being broken up or other things. Where is the information coming from? Likely competitors who are feeling the pressure against customers who want to buy from them, who Nvidia is sort of controlling or strong-arming. So I thought this was kind of fascinating, though, because I always thought that customers would be well cared for as a way to keep them buying and keep them loyal as customers. And in the case of Nvidia, that may not always be the case. So I thought I'd just review that with you today because I know some of you are in the stock. What do I think the implications will be? I think that as soon as I heard what was going on, I just expected it to be a temporary phenomenon in terms of affecting the company and its growth that would blow over because it'll take so long for the situation to be investigated and then prosecuted. And by the time they were prosecuted, they're so entrenched that it's really hard for those competitors to get any headway, was my expectation. So the issue, though, is will this investigation and the subpoenas associated affect the ability of some of the tactics I just described to work? Because now the company knows that they're under scrutiny, and therefore, by still executing these and maintaining that process, they have to pay a price for doing so. So we definitely look forward to your comments on this. I think that, yeah, it could have a 5 to 10% cutback in the number of orders and possibly the growth of sort of pricing, and therefore it could materially impact stock. Definitely. Is it going to be a huge deal? I don't think so, but it is useful to note kind of what's going on and why. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe. Next, we want to move on to our health tips. I'm going to make a point today to actually include a clip from one of the many health doctors on YouTube that I follow. Dr. Berg is excellent and highly recommended. Don't forget your 25 leg lifts a day. Wanted to encourage you to also try to maintain the same sleep schedule on a daily basis for a couple of weeks and get into that circadian rhythm that I think your body will enjoy being exposed to. Once again, thanks for joining us. Tschüss, au revoir, hoda hafez, ni hao ma, namaste. And in Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk good. Arrivederci, and thanks for joining us.